Drinks Coach, yes, it's episode whatever, series 2. Yesterday I did a tasting of 7 really good white wines from Co-op, including 2 exceptional fizzes. And we've got 8 red wines for you today. Thanks again to Lauren, Kieran, to Ben, to the whole team. Thank you very much for supporting the channel. Thank you very much for supporting your own interests, which is basically what this is. But I'm very pleased to say we have a plethora of great wines here. I actually tried to pull 2 or 3 of these wines out, but number 1, they sent them, so I should show them to you before Christmas so you get a chance to buy them. Number 2, I couldn't reasonably work out which ones weren't worth putting in. They've all either got a reason to be here because they're a nice comparison to another wine, or they're just fantastic value for money, and I really, or had a good story or something. So here we go. That's kind of sticking out of the way, isn't it? There's up my nose. So yes, red wines from the Co-op this Christmas. I've written a comprehensive list of the prices this time so I don't mess up like yesterday. Where do we start? We start at the beginning. That's where we start, and this is it. Salice Salentino Reserva. Anyone remember this stuff? I certainly do. Salice Salentino is from Puglia. It's from the heel of Italy. And I bought a Salice Salentino when I was a supermarket buyer for one of the various supermarkets, which is not Co-op, Waitrose. And at Christmas we had the fateful call from BBC Food and Drink saying that Oz and Gilly on BBC Food and Drink, a show that I am very, very proud to have presented subsequently, we're going to recommend a wine that I bought for this particular supermarket. And it was made by a producer called Cosimo Taurino. I think he's largely seen as one of the great gurus in this particular region. The wine's made from usually 2 varieties. It's made from Negro Amaro, which means bitter and black. Not a good start, really, is it? And Malvasia Nero. Malvasia is a name given to countless varieties around the European basin and around the world. You still have to be in the right country to know which Malvasia you're talking about. But in this case, it's 100% Negro Amaro, often sold as Negro Amaro del Salento. But Salice Salentino is the kind of the Appellation Controle, the premium wines of the region. And there's a reserva where the wine has to be aged in wood for a little while. Anyway, why are we talking about this? Well, I wanted to... I ordered like 3 containers full of this wine because famously when something's recommended on the Christmas show of BBC Food and Drink and they'd given us the heads up that this our Salice Salentino would be, and at $3.99 it was going to fly out. It was a long time ago. He then proceeded to talk about being at boarding school. This is Oz Clarke saying, I remember the time. There were some things which just remind you of the old days. And I remember having to go to my headmaster's study and him telling me to bend over, and I had to put a book in my trousers. Then he'd go a big run up and he'd whack me with the cane. All I could smell were the Russian icons which he'd collected on these dark armoires around this very, very sombre office. And I remember just standing up, shaking his hand and walking out. This wine, in so many ways, is an equal sleigh ride back to antiquity. That's what he said about the wine. And they went, Gilly. And we didn't sell any. I was left with tens of thousands of bottles of this stuff and nowhere to sell it. You know, he could have just said it was delicious and we would have sold thousands of bottles, but no, he scared people off it. Thanks, Oz. I'll never forget that. Anyway, why do we like this wine? Why does Oz like this wine, apart from the slightly flagelic story that I've just told you about him? Well, I like this wine because it is just Christmas. It has the taste of dried cherries and walnuts and polished old tables and the smell of church and all these things that he mentioned are kind of there. What I'm saying is you're getting an awful lot of bang for your buck. I mean, you're getting a cathedral in a bottle. This is £8. They're typically about 13 or 14% alcohol. This is 13.5. Got a dark colour. Negro Amaro, the key variety, or the sole variety in this case, bitter and black, has been managed more recently over the last 20 years. And people have learned how to manage tannin in a wine better. We use a thing called microboulage or cliquage, which is a measured oxidation of the wine as it's fermenting, which softens and polymerizes all those tough edges they used to have. If you've got a nice bit of blue cheese, Maybe one of those cheeses with the walnuts on, the Rambol, like processed cheese. I know we're not supposed to like them. We all deliciously love it, don't we? Yeah, I think something like some gorgonzola, maybe some bowl of nuts, maybe some quite strong sausage. This is perfect for that. It's got acidity. At the same time, it's got this lovely dried baked fruit compote flavour. So much flavour in that wine for the money. £8. If this is all you can afford this Christmas, and let's face it, there's a lot of us out there. Remember, I didn't buy these wines. Coop sent them to me. If it was a show about wines that I could buy to show you, that would be the only one on the table. And it's delicious, okay? Absolutely fantastic, good value for money. And it is an archetypal example of what Salice Salentino should taste like. And it's not at great money. I imagine it's from a co-op. It's been bottled by Botter. Job done. Moving on. Okay, so the next wine here is a wine which, the reason why I couldn't throw this out, it's called Irresistible Languedoc, is because Sainsbury's have a Languedoc, and Waitrose have a Languedoc, and Tesco's have a Languedoc, and you know what? They're all made by the same guy. They're all made by this guy, Jean-Claude Mas, Jean-Paul Mas. Family Mas are the kind of like, they're the mafiosi of the Languedoc, of the Occitanie. And that sounds really harsh. It is harsh because actually they're really good people to work with, and they make incredibly good value for money wines. Everything from Picpoul to go with your oysters in the south, from the Étang de Chateau, right up to Languedoc and Côte de Languedoc, and premium wines from the appellations like La Lavinière and Minervois, things like that. The reason I'm picking this one is I tasted one at every single press tasting this Christmas, and this is the best one. So if you're trying to work out who's got the best Jean-Paul Mas Languedoc, will I say it's the best? It's the one I prefer. It's 14% alcohol, but this wine to me tastes the most French. If you're going to buy wine from France, it might as well have some notion of where it's from. Some of them are a little bit more ripe and waxy and commercial and easy to drink. I think the Sainsbury's one is very commercial, very commercial and very attractive, but it's almost like a baby Australian Shiraz, or a kind of, it could easily sit alongside an Argentinian Malbec or something like that, but with a little bit more panache. And despite that, Sainsbury's have that incredibly good, cheap Argentinian Malbec at £7. But here we are in the co-op, drinking the Irresistible Languedoc by Jean-Claude Mas, sorry. It's inky, has a licorice nose. A nose a bit like, liquor chocolates. When you smell that, there's kind of sort of cocoa powder, chocolate, and sort of almost like cherry and mulberry jam, but with booze in it. It's like boozy chocolates. That's the way it smells. What could be more Christmassy than that? But very Languedoc. I mean, if you think about the wines from that region, Fougères, Cabernet, Languedoc, that's a telltale for me. That's a sign of where it's from, is that wonderful licorice quality to the wine. No edges. Crenellations, texture, yes, but nothing hard, nothing out of place, nothing green. But it finishes with a lovely lip-smacking furring around the gums. It's got some tannin. It's not flyaway, and it's not soft and wobbly. This wine has structure, it has shape, it has boundaries. I think this wine is absolutely delicious, I think. And I think of all the wines, I think some of them might be slightly more, slightly less, but this is £10 on the nose. Absolutely fantastic. And if you want to upscale, let's go to this. This is from the Bonfils family, Maison Bonfils. And this is from a estate called Chateau Millegrand. I think because the 1,000 grand, I don't know. And it's called Cuvée Aurora. This wine has got a lot more bottle age on it. The last wine we had here was 2022. This wine is 4 years older. So we're seeing a wine that's properly made from a proper estate. But we talk about a single estate here. This is one of the biggest estates in the whole of Occitanie, in the whole of the south of France. I believe it's 252 hectares under vine. That's just a shade over 620 acres. That's a big vineyard. That's big, like old school Rioja big. But no harm for it. I mean, they make a lot of wine there. There are millions and millions of bottles. But some of the finest importers and wine merchants in the land, people like Jeroboam's, buy wine from this producer. And this wine has got it all. It's 50% Syrah to start with, so it has this hallmark of being quite gutsy and strong, and it's 50% Shiraz or Syrah. And then you've got a blend of your Grenache, your little bit of Carignan, a little bit more Mourvedre. But this is a classic southern French blend or Midi blend. But you get so much value for your money. This is £1 more than this. This is £11. This is £10 and it's fantastic, and I like it for its freshness and youth. But if you want something a bit grand, something that's grand enough for a roast rib of beef maybe on Christmas Day, or something like roast duck, this is where I'm going. Okay, lovely with squab pigeon or a bit of game. Some more oak used here. It's been aged in foeders or in barrels. It's designed to be kept, I think. That's really classy stuff. I mean, really, really classy. You can pay an awful lot more for that, for a wine of that quality, almost anywhere in the world. But this is really what France does well. I'm looking at this and seeing how many of these wines are French. Ben, who's the senior buyer at the Co-op and is responsible for France, it's just a bit of a showpiece for you, isn't it? You can do this with your eyes shut, can't you? But these are really great wines. The little selection of French wines that are here are magical. We've just started off with an entry level, slightly better than entry level, but certainly better than average and almost premium Languedoc at £10, which I think I might go back and drink tonight. That's really, I'm sort of vibing off that. Then you've got this bigger, butcher, richer wine that kind of needs food. Maybe a beef pie, maybe a steak and kidney pie, something like that. Absolutely delicious. Now we're going to move on to a wine which is made from the same grape varieties, but this has got more Grenache in it than Shiraz. This is an absolute treat. This is a 2020, which was a very warm vintage, particularly good for red wines, and stunning in the Southern Rhone, which is where this wine's from. And in 2019, this wine, which comes from Le Grand Serre, which is one of the great cooperatives of France, this wine would have been called Côte du Rhône Village Cairanne in 2019. But this wine, Carius, is now called Cairanne. And why? In 2020, the powers that be in France decided that Cairanne, as a crew, as an actual area of vines in the Côte du Rhône Village, was good enough that it should be allowed to just be called Cairanne and not Côte du Rhône Village Cairanne. This happened to Gigondas in 1949. Was called Côte du Rhône Village Gigondas, one presumes, but then it became called Gigondas in 49, much with the help of Gabriel Meffre, who was the great developer of the region. Then it happened to Vaqueiras. I think it happened in Vaqueiras in 2010. Something like that. No longer called Côte du Rhône Vaqueiras, but Vaqueiras. And now it's happened to our chappy chaps at Cairanne. This is a big deal. This is changing legislation and rules and law. And it means that Cairanne breaks through the glass ceiling of being merely a Côte du Rhône Village, which seems to have a price cap. You can't really sell a Côte du Rhône Village unless it's from a very famous producer for more than about 15 or 16 quid. But this has broken through that cap, and there are Cairannes which are very, very premium, which cost a little bit more money. But having said that, it's the same price as this. It's £11. This is £11, and it's a premium red from the Rhone. You know how much I love the Rhone. I went off. If you look on YouTube and look at Roaming the Rhone, and you'll see me and a very large and extremely scary elite rugby player, Andrew Sheridan, and a fabulous, gorgeous and highly entertaining presenter in Libby Brodie, us kicking about in the Rhone a couple of years ago. And it shows you about the region, it shows you about sustainability, it shows you about the legacy of the region, it shows you about what's going on, what's changing, what's not. And it was 3 of the best days I've had in the last, well, during lockdown. It was just nice to be away, but I had the most amazing time with these people, and we had a very special time with Julie. Thank you, Julie, who looked after us, who's from the Interrhone, which is the government body that promotes such things. Some wittering, I know. What time is it? 14 minutes, we're doing okay. We're halfway through my 8 wines. I think I'm doing well. So let's just quick recap. Salice Salentino, just amazing value for money. That's it's like a suitcase full of stuff in a briefcase. And this is Salice Salentino for £8. Brilliantly wintry wine. If you're outside in a bonfire having a glass of wine, this is the kind of wine you want. So much flavour. Then we've got Languedoc. This was the John Paul Mass, made by John Paul Mass, blah blah. which for me took the Jean-Claude Masse or Jean-Paul Masse trophy this year. Having mentioned that, you know, all the supermarkets have wine made by this guy. And by the way, yesterday's show, if you saw that delicious Marsanne that I was raving about, here's as well. I just think that's brilliant for £10. And then £11 is almost too much wine for this particular bit. Very powerful, very rich, intense. Not Rhone, but Midi, but the Midi equivalent of Chateauneuf de Pape. Flavour, alcohol, edges, fire, power, age potential, but also incredibly harmonious and balanced at the same time. Real banger. Same price, and we're going up into Cairanne, the first vintage of Cru Cairanne that's been allowed in France. It's paler in colour. Why? Because this is 50% Grenache, not 50% Syrah, and Grenache has bigger, thinner skinned grapes, which produces a paler wine. Because remember, the colour of a wine comes from the skin, and this is 50% Syrah, which are small, thick grapes. So, irrespective of the quality of the wine, this wine's always going to be darker because there's more colour to juice. Get me? Right? So, I think Julie's got me addicted. Thanks, Jules. I hope your daughter's well, and your husband. Cheers to them both. Although it finishes Rhone, because of the vintage, and it was a very warm year, not so hot that it was baking, it's like tiptoeing through a mixture of southern red Burgundy, soft, silky, soyeux, the French would call it, fluffy wine. Then there's this wonderful, elegant, but marked granitic flavour, this flavour that's a bit like Beaujolais. And then it finishes like a Rhone, which is dry and pumicey with no sugar in the mouth at all. So it's like walking from, it's a bit of a silly idea, but it works. It's like walking from Burgundy through Beaujolais into Rhone. It gives you all those pleasures in one glass. And I don't know, for £11, it's very, very hard to think of a better wine than that now. Maybe that one, or that one. I've been waiting for this because I haven't tasted these since the press tasting, which was some weeks ago. And I remember thinking, am I right about these wines? Particularly the first one. I mean, is this wine as good as I think it is? Well, we've got two clarets here. And the reason why I picked two clarets, because they're quite similar in price. £14.50, which is it's a joke. I've seen it online for more than £20. And 16, is it? £16 for this. This is what Coop, or Ben, does. Every Christmas, there's always a couple of cheeky clarets where you go, how can they do it at that price? And they're just brilliant wines, which encapsulate, like the Wine Society can do, encapsulate what's wonderful and special about these wines, and what's special about this region, but at a price that people can afford. They've sold, and Ben has sold to me, unbeknownst to him probably, many bottles of Chateau Senejac, which is a great wine. It used to be made by a lovely Kiwi lady. I think she's moved on. But here we've got two wines, which are great Bordeaux. And the fact that I think that I'm told these are under £20 is almost like I need to check even now, although I've checked it like 100 times, and I've checked the sheets that we had before. But these wines are fantastic. There are wines. Some very nice wines. There was a very nice Margot, if I remember, for example, that are in the £25-30 bracket, available at Co-op this Christmas. But I'd buy two of these instead, if I'm honest. Okay, first one, Chapelle d'Aliénor. Aliénor is a lovely name. It's an old arcane French name. Aliénor or Léonore is the name of, for example, Madame Veuve Clicquot from Veuve Clicquot. That was her Christian name. It's a traditional, old, famous heraldic name in France. And so Chapelle d'Aliénor is obviously a chapel which has been devoted to this particular lady. I don't know who this particular Aliénor is, but what's wonderful about this wine is, if I read the back label, it says Chateau, Chapelle d'Aliénor by La Gaffelière. What the hell does that mean? Well, Château La Gaffelière is a pretty sexy wine. Château La Gaffelière, not to be confused with Canon La Gaffelière, which is also very nice, by Stéphane Denipeg. These are two of the great Saint-Emilion Grand Crus, not the lowly B Grand Crus, but the proper Grand Crus of Saint-Emilion. And they are two of the finest expressions of Merlot blends you'll find anywhere. Anyway, this wine is a Bordeaux Supérieur, which means it comes from sites. I actually tried to look for where the site was briefly before I did this show. Now, I suddenly realised it doesn't really matter to you as long as it tastes right. But I remember writing my tasting notes. Tastes a bit like La Londe Pomerol. Now, La Londe Pomerol is a satellite region from Pomerol. Pomerol being a famous region for Le Pin, for Petrus. These are the most expensive Merlots in the world. We're talking thousands of pounds a bottle. And the satellite regions around that, Chateau, Canon, Fronsac, Canon Fronsac, La Londe Pomerol, these all have sort of different grades of, and different styles of wine, but different levels of finesse. And I think La Londe Pomerol is only second to Pomerol in the style of wine that it produces. So Pomerol and Saint-Emilion, which are both east of Bordeaux down the Dordogne, they're next to each other, but they're quite different. Saint-Emilion has a soft poetry to it. It has a lilt to it. It has a complexity, a slightly, what sometimes manifests itself as oxidation, but is not. It's kind of layering of different flavours from ripe to baked, where Pomerol has a much more, I think, pristine backbone, more upright, more matador. And so I'm going to be really old school about this, and maybe somebody's going to stop following me because of this. And I have a daughter, Jem, love you, Jem, who doesn't identify as male or female, but she asked me to call her Jem, and I'm going to say that there is a male-female thing here. But I think, can't we still talk about male traits and female traits? I mean, I don't know how we'd call them otherwise, but people know what I'm talking about, even if I'm doing it the wrong way. But Saint-Emilion tends to be more elegant, more effete, maybe, more submissive, let's call it that. And then Pomerol tends to be, I think, more upfront and more direct. God, that was a lot of hard work. I don't know why, I'm getting bogged down in woke culture. God, this is a nightmare. Anyway, right, let's have a look at these wines. What I've got here is a wine that's made from about 80% Merlot and 20% Cabernet Sauvignon in a vineyard which is only listed as Bordeaux Supérieur. I studied winemaking in Bordeaux and worked in vineyards for 2 years in Bordeaux Supérieur, in little pockets around here and there. There's an appellation contrôlée called Entre deux Mers, AOC, which is famous for making Sauvignon and Semillon blends and a little bit of Muscadel and a Colombard. But they're the beautiful dry white wines you drink with oysters in Bordeaux. Highly memorable, I assure you. But also that area can be split into the wines of Bordeaux, AOC, because the region's only a white wine region, or Bordeaux Supérieur, which is considered slightly better, has to have a higher minimum alcohol level. In a blind tasting, you have to satisfy a lot of old gits that the wine tastes but good enough to be called Supérieur. Anyway, this is so way above that. This is so way above basic Bordeaux Supérieur. This is UFO above that. Okay, but it's made at Canon La Gaffelière. Sorry, not Canon. It's made by Chateau La Gaffelière, not Canon La Gaffelière. It's imported by the great Maison Sichel, who own Chateau d'Angleterre, one of my favourite clarets. And it's 14 quid. Okay, I didn't know what price it was. I don't like drinking Bordeaux and knowing what price they are, because you really do find there's exceptional value for money. Bordeaux has more value great wines than any other wine region in France, in my opinion. Well, with the exception probably the Rhone, where everything's delicious. But I look at this colour, and it's deep. It's got a beautiful garnet, dark vermilion colour to it. This wine is from 2018 vintage, which was a mixed bag, to say the least, in the right bank in this area around Saint-Emilion and Pomerol. But get it right with some freshness, because a lot of the wines were lacking acidity, I think, in 2018, and you end up with a wine which is really quite stunning. There was even pockets of rain in this part of 2018, in this part of Bordeaux, where whole other regions were so hot it was hard to make wine. Jeez, it's just 14 quid. Are you kidding me? It's ripe. Not overripe, but really pushing the boundaries of ripe. It feels like it's about 14%. Let's have a look. It's 14% alcohol. I can smell like husks of chestnuts, just a hint of that sort of earthiness. And a lovely smell of deep plum fruit. It's stunning. First class stunning. I'm not usually a big fan of 100% Merlot wines because Merlot is like tofu. It's all texture, not much excitement. It's like lift music. It's like that. But when you add some Cabernet Franc to it, the whole thing catches fire. It's got tobacco. It's got kind of, I don't know, yeah, again, chestnuts, chestnut kernels, toasted. I can smell chestnuts roasting on it. You get my drift. That is just a brilliant bottle of wine, particularly based on the fact that Merlot, 99 times 100, is a bit shit. This is the region in the world, one of the very few regions that can really express joy and class in Merlot. And this wine is £14, but you could easily find a lazy producer in Pomerol itself, or even has a Grand Cru, one of the 72 Grand Crus in Saint-Emilion, who is charging about £30. And this wine's better than that. I swear to God, that's true. It is really, really amazing stuff for the money. And I would have thought this was a £20 plus wine. Tasting it, smelling it, I'm thinking 23 quid, 24 quid. This is £14, 14.50, whatever it was. Go and get it before it runs out, because I can't be the only one that saw that. I wasn't the only journalist at the tasting, but I haven't seen anybody going bonkers about this wine yet. Well, they should be. And if I'm the first, fantastic. Okay, moving on to the other Bordeaux, which is also 2018. This is the other side of the coin. 14.5% alcohol this time. I told you it was a right vintage. And this wine is from the Haut Médoc. So this isn't from the bit that goes out down the Dordogne, which is Saint-Emilion, Côte de Castillon, Pomerol, all that malarkey. It's going up the thing from Bordeaux. So first you get to Haut Médoc. That's where we are, Haut Médoc. We've got Margaux, Saint-Julien, Pauillac, Saint-Estèphe, and then more Haut Médoc. So this one's actually from the Médoc, but it's actually relatively low down the Médoc, but it's near the river on really high quality benchland. And the vineyards are seriously, seriously good quality. First class indeed. This wine, if you see the label, I don't think you'll be able to see that actually. Well, I hope you can. It says, no, you can't see that really. But along here it says Cru Bourgeois Supérieur. This is one of the Cru Bourgeois. During the mid-1900s, a lot of winemakers that said, well, why is it only 61 wines in the whole of Bordeaux have been given Cru Classé status? And it was when Napoleon was alive back in 1855. Look, people that have entered the game since then don't get a sniff in, do they? So they decided that they should produce this thing called the Cru Bourgeois, which is regularly reviewed. The wines are checked every so often to make sure they stand up and stack up. But Cru Bourgeois Supérieur or Cru Bourgeois Exceptionnel means these wines are largely considered to be the best of the new breed in the Médoc. This is near the coast. It's actually next to a Margaux vineyard at Lascombe and a very famous age-worthy Saint-Julien vineyard called Grave la Rose. So it's in very good flipping company. The other thing is, second wines from the most expensive wines in the world, like Chateau, no, maybe not Chateau, that's probably a bad choice, but things like Cairanne de Lafite, or the second wine from Lafite, or second wine from Margaux, Pavillon, this is a region famous for making great Cabernet Sauvignon based wines, and the second wines are often more Merlot than Cabernet. This is the way things have gone, so the wines can be drunk nice and young and plush and delicious, and they're beautifully made. They're still made on great terroir, but frankly not showing the best of what Médoc does. Cabernet Sauvignon's the best that Médoc does, and what's wonderful about Lamothe Bergeron is it's more Cabernet than Merlot. It's 55% Cabernet, 45% Merlot. So as a sort of lesser wine, this has probably got more Cabernet in it than most wines in the Médoc these days, because it's not designed to be all plush and precocious and to be sold en masse to people who just want to drink lots of claret young. If you go from, this is by the town of Roquefort, and the family that make, no, the family that made the other one was Maillot Roquefort actually. Sorry, my bad. Ignore me. Anyway, so here we are. We've got the Gironde, which is the estuary that comes up from Bordeaux, like that. And this is the Atlantic. And you've got the spit of land, which is the Médoc. If you go along the Gironde, At the beginning, you've got sort of Chateau Contabel, a few other places, Haut, La Lagune, places like that, and then you come up, and then along relatively near to the actual estuary itself, lots of oyster beds and so forth. You get to Lamothe Bergeron, and Lamothe Bergeron, I don't know why, but if you look at, there's another producer which is beyond Saint Julien, beyond Pauillac, beyond some stuff, but it's here on similar quality of sand and soil, and a similar quality of sort of high quality indeed, but it's quite a long way north, but it has the same distance from the seas, got the same altitude off the water table, and that's a wine called Chateau Saucion de Malais, which I think is a Saint Estèphe, maybe. No, I think it's no Médoc, and it's north of Saint Estèphe. But Saucion de Malais is a wine which has, as a Cru Bourgeois, punched way above its weight for decades and has produced glorious wines in the past. The 85 Saucion de Malais continues to just taste stunning, and I was very fortunate once to eat there for lunch, and I had a most special time. And this is Lamothe Bergeron, which is further south, but actually in situ, when you look at the actual microclimate and the conditions that are there, I don't think Lamothe Bergeron's very different. So 2018 Saucion de Malais, I've been told it was an extremely good vintage for Saucion de Malais, and this wine has a lot of new oaks. It's quite exotic, full of rich flavours. I don't know what the last time I looked at, but it's going to be in the mid 40s. I think it's over 45 quid even. This is 16 quid, and I've always seen Lamothe Bergeron as a baby Saucion de Malais. Now, if there are any real Bordeaux freaks out there, I'm looking to you, Gareth Birchley, and a few others. Please let me know if you think I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. God, this wine's so good. Woo! This wine has a dark brooding nose which smells of profound quality Médoc. I think about wines like Cambon La Pelouse from up Médoc and Chateau Peugeot. Those wines aren't as dry, aren't as serious, I don't think, in some ways, as the nose on this particular wine. They're beautifully fragrant, aromatic. Peugeot is one of my favourite wines, but it's gone through the roof price-wise. And I'm not entirely sure why Lamothe Bergeron's been left behind, but profound nose, very dry and savoury, despite the 49% alcohol, which gives it some fruit sweetness in the middle. This does have that kind of four-square, savoury, firm, austere's not right, chiselled, charpente, constructed character to it, a bit like Saint Estèphe. It's what we used to call wines that are four-square. But this wine's 5 years old already, but this wine is going to be absolutely flipping delicious in 10 and probably more so in 15 years. This is a wine that tastes quite amazing at Christmas. Now, drink this with roast goose. This is my goose choice, okay? I've got a couple of wines that are going to go into a tasting, which I'll do to choose my favourite wines for Christmas, you know, depending on whether it's roast turkey or goose, as I always do. But while we're in this lineup from the Co-op, you have to look at these two clarets and think, £30 buys you both bottles, and that is just insane how good these two clarets are. Some of the best value I've ever seen. Okay, which leaves us with two more wines. Yeah, I did run on a bit, didn't I? But this was worth talking about. Okay. This is Argento wines from Argentina. A brilliant outfit that produce a huge amount of rosé and Malbec and a few other drinks. They have a very nice Cabernet Franc. This, the Artesano, is organic, it's fair trade, and it's 80% Malbec and 20% Cabernet Franc, which is very similar to the blends you might find in somewhere like Cahors. So although this is very much a high altitude Argentine red wine, it fights in the same arena of spectrum of flavour as really nice Southern French wine does. It's not stupidly dark in colour. Has a lovely smell of blueberries, bit of spice. There's some clove from the Malbec. It's a really lovely wine. Considering I've just tasted two red wines, 2 Bordeaux's, which I've just fawned over, saying they tasted like wines which cost double their price. This is £10.50. If you like Malbec, if you want something a bit more serious, a bit more reined in, a bit more European in style, have a crack at this. It's absolutely delicious. But also, be well. You know what? People weren't taking the piss out of to make this wine. It's fair trade, it's organic, it's sustainable, it's all those things. But it's actually a very, very, very tasty wine. It doesn't feel like 14% alcohol either. It feels more like 13. But it's racy, it's put together beautifully. And an example of just how amazing some of the wines in South America are, that they can be made on such a giant scale. I don't think it's giant scale, but it's going to be large scale. And still manage to deliver the goods, left, right and centre. And the fact that I even entertain this wine after these 2, well, even these 5, 6, is an amazing thing. Last wine. This is from Bethany. Bethany, I remember tasting in a place called Glenelg. I remember tasting some wines at a wine tasting in 1994. And the great, as aforementioned, Oz Clark from the beginning. Oz Clark comes over and goes, what are you drinking now? And I said, it's Bethany. I tasted a wine. And he said, what does it remind you of? And I said, it reminds me of Bethany, made by the Schrapel family, 1991 Semillon for the Barossa. And he showed me a sheet, and he'd written down Bethany Semillon on his sheet. So we both thought that a wine reminded us both of exactly the same wine, which is an extraordinary experience, and probably one of the reasons why Oz has been such a wonderful supporter of mine ever since. And he's been an incredible man. He just got an OBE. So a round of applause to our greatest ambassador in wine, certainly in my lifetime. And it's just a privilege to know the guy. He's amazing. Okay, so Bethany. It's called 6 Gen Grenache. Bethany's famous for Semillon, the other white wine from Bordeaux, which also makes wines all over Australia in different styles. We won't go there just yet. Maybe that's a chance of a special later on. But this is also famous, a region famous, or a family that's famous for growing Grenache. I imagine these vines are bush trained. I don't know. I imagine some of these vines are very old. But this is a 2022 6 Gen old vine Grenache. Now I say old vine in this area. We're often talking about vines that could be up to 100 years old. They've been tilling the soil. The Schrapel family, who still own it, I've been tilling the vineyard for 150 years. Why are we here? Well, Grenache was a very important grape variety to be planted when the first proper settlers arrived in South Australia, because it was a grape variety that produced very good port and was also distillable, but it produced wines that didn't go off because you could fortify them, and was fantastic at making port and sherry. And for that reason, for those people that were more reticent to just rip these things up when Cabernet Sauvignon became more fashionable, they have these wonderful old museum vineyards. So they don't produce much wine, but the wine is of much higher value per bunch of grapes than others, because old vine Grenache is a rare thing. It tastes, if I'm in Barossa, before I try this, it always reminds me of Hartley's raspberry jam on the nose. It's wonderful, piercing, almost smell the pips aroma of raspberry jam, like the perfect raspberry jam for your croissant. I can almost smell the croissant and the butter in the background. It's also quite pale in colour, because we know that Grenache grapes aren't that thick in skin, unless they're Garnacha Peluda from Spain, which means hairy Grenache thick skinners. Well, it has wonderful soaring smells of cedar. It's a wonderful spice. I can't really put my finger on it. Almost like frankincense, I think. Where are we? 12.50? I think, something like that. Let's have a look. But this is old school classic Grenache. Now, at Christmas, I think it's very important to have Grenache, and that's the reason why I put this in the lineup. This is why I didn't pull it out. Because, do you ever make the Tom and Jerry ham? Yeah? The ham with the bone through it. Tom and Jerry running around, and on the table there's this massive pink thing with a bone through it. That's the Tom and Jerry ham, the big ham. Or maybe you boil it, maybe you roast it, maybe you poach it, maybe you cover it in Coca-Cola like Nigella. Whatever it is, I love hot ham with some potatoes, new potatoes with Cumberland sauce over it. It's a wonderful thing. But I think ham is as important to meat, a hot meat, on the Christmas table as virtually anything else. And this is always my favourite wine to go with it. It's fantastic. Also, because it goes very well with the Tom and Jerry ham in slices, with maybe a bit of mango chutney in a sandwich on Boxing Day, it also goes extremely well with bacon sandwiches. That's the 26th, the 27th and the 28th sorted. So, 40 minutes, recap. Salice Salentino, amazing bang for your buck, £8. Languedoc, a tenner. Millegrand, £11. Carius, Cairanne, all the Rhone you could possibly imagine for £11. Then, Chateau d'Aliénor, we're talking about baby Pomerol here, guys, for £14.50. I'm not shitting you, it's amazing. And Lamothe Bergeron, classic claret. I mean, claret upright like you should be. Amazing with roast goose or with roast beef. £16. Artesano from Malbec, this is £10.50. It's just a healthy, happy, cuddlingly good way to enjoy some wine this Christmas. And then we've got a good old-fashioned Australian Grenache, which goes great with the Tom and Jerry ham. What's tomorrow? Wine Society? See you then.